What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more PGA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel, this time for the final major of the 2025 season. It is the Open Championship. In this video, we will discuss the top plays for your DFS lineups from our data-driven Occupy model. We will look at what industry projections are telling us to give us a hint at the projected ownership in your contests. Then we will look to the betting markets. We're recording this early on Monday, but we do have a good idea of which golfers are seeing their odds to win improve already and how that can impact your DFS lineups. And then we'll close out the show with some weather-related notes, always important at the Open Championship. And Niro and I will build a live lineup here for a GPP on DraftKings. So stick around to the very end for that. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. No longer in the 2025 Fantasy Golf World Championship. We'll talk about that in a second. But I am joined, like always, by our PGA DFS analyst at Occupy. It is Niromada. Niro, happy final major week of 2025.
Yeah, this is it. Last few weeks of big contests. So not only is this the last major, so this is obviously the last biggest week of contests. We're now only a couple weeks away from having the contest on all sites get shrunk down for football season. So, this is the last hurrah in many respects. And let me offer you my official condolences on behalf of myself and the audience on your unceremonious exit from the FGWC.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Still working on getting over that emotionally, but $5,000 in the pocket never hurt anyone. So if you guys have questions about that, you can always comment below or hit us up in our Discord server. But in order to move on, both emotionally and financially, we look to the Open Championship. And what better way than to look to our Occupy model, our data-driven model. We look at what's important for a course, feed that into our model. The model spits out the top plays for FanDuel and DraftKings every single week. And we'll get into it with the top plays for our model for the Open Championship right now. And Niro, just from a high level, I don't want to get too much into this because the people do want the hashtag picks. But the weather looks relatively calm, and we will talk about the weather again at the end. But I think if, in terms of modeling the course and what's important for a player's success here, the windier and the worse weather conditions you get, the more that scrambling and around the greens will be important compared to what we're looking at now. Not too bad, and it could be more of a ball striking, accuracy, greens and regulation, ball striking robot fest.
I would agree with that. The worse the weather is, the more you're going to have to rely on the scrambling and the short game. The main challenge of the course is the fairway bunkering, actually. And again, most of these fairway bunkers, similar to what you saw if you were watching the Scottish Open last week, are basically half shot penalties if you get in them because they're really hard to advance the ball out of most of the time. You're going sideways. So that if that's the main defense, obviously the course has some taller grasses further away from the fairway and some of the green surrounds and undulations, but primary defense is those fairway bunkers. In that case, it is absolutely going to be more of a ball striking fest. And if the wind does stay down, by the way, everyone keep checking the forecast. These forecasts change, especially for these events and the Open Championship, change every day, sometimes every hour. So keep checking that. But as long as it stays down, it should be more of a ball striking fest, and that's where I'll be gearing my player selections.
Absolutely. And as I say in every major week, there's plenty of YouTube content out there as well. And irrelevant how you feel about YouTube golf, you go watch Grant Horvat or Brian Bro's videos this week. They played 2 rounds at Royal Portrush, where this Open Championship is being played, and you get a pretty good sense of what's important at this course. Yes, they're not pro level players, nor are they in the event, but just seeing them navigate the course, you can see what's important. So, with that in mind, let's look at the top plays in our model. And Nero, let's just start with the top four because this is a very stud-driven field, and no surprises really at the top of the model in terms of who the guys are. Maybe the ordering is a bit surprising, but the top four players in our model this week are Colin Morikawa, former Open Championship winner; Tommy Fleetwood, runner-up at this event in 2019; Scotty Scheffler, who we talked about last week, and a win has eluded him here in this side of the world; and John Rahm, who is another great fit for this course. So we look at these four studs, Nero. What are your thoughts on them and the ordering that the model has them in?
Suppose in some ways I'm not too surprised. When we go through my ball striking robot people, Morikawa and Fleetwood are at the top of the list, usually with Corey Connors. Like those are probably the three guys that I think of the most as the epitome of that just amazing top level ball strikers. Maybe leave some things to be desired in the short game. But so not that surprised to see Morikawa and Fleetwood on top. Obviously, Scotty is Scotty and is very good in all facets of the game, but an amazing iron player and a great driver of the golf ball. And then, maybe not surprising to see Rom up there, who's also an outstanding driver of the golf ball and the approach and the total driving, uh, very high. And then when you sprinkle in a dabble of the around the green metrics, it's no surprise to see Rom up there. If you then say the model, as we talk about all the time, is geared a little bit more towards high risk contests, then I could see why Morikawa and Fleetwood would sit on top of Scheffler and Rom at the very top of the models rankings.
And just to recap what we talked about with Scheffler last week, Nero, we mentioned the biggest concern for him in this part of the world on these link style courses are his putting on the slow greens. We mentioned it last week that in our model last week he was 80th or 83rd in terms of the entire field putting on these greens historically. And now we come here, another slow green should run 10 on the stent meter. And he lost strokes again last week at the Scottish Open. Would have won if he was probably neutral or close to neutral. So again, I'll ask you the same question I asked you last week. How much does that concern you if you're considering a Scotty build or just heavy Scotty exposure in your lineups in total?
Yeah, I mean it concerns me. It would concern me a lot more if say he was 16,200 instead of the 14,200 that he is on DraftKings. Even with the enhanced pricing and the pricing all the way down to the 5K range, Scotty is eminently affordable. You can build lineups, very easily with him that even as a casual player would make you feel good. So, because I think he has the highest floor of anyone in the event, and that is absolutely not up for debate and is not even close. Yeah, I don't have a ton of issue with him because again, last week, great example. He was eighth. You didn't even see a ton of him in the coverage, maybe a little bit on Sunday. You know, you saw him talking to the hole, like literally the golf hole, like he was a crazy old man halfway through the day on Sunday. That's how poorly he putted for him, again, his standards. And was he in almost every single winning GPP lineup that I saw across most of the sites, certainly all over on FanDuel and on a lot of the ones on DraftKings? Yes, he was. And that's because of that floor and because they just can't price him high enough. So, yeah, it's a long-winded answer to your question of no, it doesn't concern me.
And you mentioned the dynamic pricing, guys pricing the 5K. We've seen this for majors before, and you mentioned his price tag 14,200. And you and I were talking right before the show, thinking, is this the highest price we've ever had a golfer? Consulted our database. He was actually 14.4 just a couple weeks ago at the U.S. Open. So not even as expensive as he was then. So moving on, Nero, we have two major winners. One very recently, J.J. Spawn, U.S. Open winner from a couple weeks ago, and Xander Schauffele, former winner of the Open Championship. So look at J.J. Spawn, Xander Schauffele. You and I talked about Xander last week. Is he back? Do we trust him? Looks pretty good for most of the tournament. Got up into the top 20. And then J.J. Spawn, if we're talking accuracy and approach, he's another guy that fits the bill.
Yeah, Schauffele, my biggest concern would be the driving. I know his good drive percentage is a little bit lower than it has been historically. So it seems like the driver has been the thing that has been slowest to come back from his injury hiatus. But otherwise, very good, well-rounded player. The approach, the ball striking, the around the green, the scoring. Like he, as you mentioned, he played pretty well last week at the Scottish, so he should be primed and ready to go good here. Spawn, in it, lack of distance, but again, as we saw at the U.S. Open, elite ball striker. When he's on, a very good driver of the golf ball. And if we believe the weather forecast that the rain is mostly going to stay away this week, we know already from the Scottish Open that it's been very dry in that general vicinity of Europe over the spring. So it should be firm and fast. So the guys that are a little bit less on the distance side should have no issue keeping up this week. So that kind of takes away one of Spawn's biggest weak points. So I suppose I shouldn't be surprised to see him up near the top of the model.
And the U.S. Open major winner just 6,900 on DraftKings. Still zero respect for JJ Spawn. And the pricing, once again, is you can call it soft or you can call it bad, but a lot of mispriced players this week based on just their 2025 performance as well as their odds just in general to win the Open Championship. Next in our model, 7, 8, and 9 ranked golfers: Shane Lowry, Daniel Berger, and Victor Hovland. So talked about it before, Nero, but Lowry won this event in 2019 at this course. Daniel Berger, we've talked about on and off throughout the season. He's only 6,600. And Victor Hovland, a top 10 for him last week as well. So you see these names, and again, kind of similar types of players in terms of ball striking and approach. So the model is kind of spitting out a preferred player type.
Yeah, 100%. You don't, with all three of these players, the thing that holds them back the most relative to the rest of their games is their short game, specifically the putting for Berger, Hovland, and even for Lowry, even though he's improved there quite a bit over the last, call it like 12 to 18 months. And they've all actually had very good seasons. They have been more hit and miss than some of those guys at the very top of the model. But very good ball strike, good approach stats for all of them. Most of them have good drive, like good high drive percentages. So they fit in a lot of those ways. Lowry obviously has the subjective factors in his favor. He's also the defending champ at this course, which, with this new open rota, where we're only 5 years removed from the course where we last hosted in 2019, or 6 years now, it's really rare that you would be able to come to a major venue, again, outside of the Masters, where you play the same course every year, and be able to defend your title while you're still kind of in your golfing prime and you're in the same, you're playing the same course in one of these open rotation type things. So unique opportunity for Lowry. I expect him to be, very plugged in and ready to go. But yeah, all three of them would just be kind of slightly lesser versions of that ball striking profile.
And finally, number 10 in our model, the first surprise, I would say, is Nick Taylor, who has won on tour this year. So it's not like he's a bad golfer by any means, or a really big surprise like some of the guys we've seen at the top of our model some weeks this season. But here's a PGA Tour multi-time winner, Nero, and he is just 6K in the model. Really likes him this week, not just for his price tag, but just in general.
We've got some other players that we're going to talk about priced right around him that are just like glaring values based on their odds to win. So again, I think the model is very good at sniffing out these pivots right around those players, because I think the other two players that we're going to talk about, I wouldn't say that they're any better than Nick Taylor. They're just hotter names, and they're more common names. Maybe, well, one of them more common just because of how he played last week. But yeah, they're a little bit more in the current zeitgeist right now than Nick Taylor. But I'd say Nick Taylor on the whole is probably actually a more accomplished player than both of them. And so I think the model has rightly identified, like, oh, hey, by the way, here's someone who is going to be less owned significantly than these other two players priced around him, and is just as good, if not better, like from a entire player profile perspective. Use him for your high risk contests.
Which we'll keep in our back pocket for the end of the show when we get to the high risk lineup build segment. So you mentioned guys who were mispriced and will be more popular in that price range right around Nick Taylor. Let's just transition into our next segment, the high stakes ownership bump. We saw it last week on the show. We talked about Chris Gotterup being quote unquote mispriced, and he was relative to his odds to win. He was 70, 80 to 1 pre-tournament. Way underpriced at just 7K on DraftKings. One of the few times we talk about fading the chalk and how it usually works out, even if they're underpriced like that, and normally it pays off. There are a couple times of the week, a couple times of the season, unfortunately, especially when it's during the Fantasy Golf World Championship Round 2, that the chalk does well and sometimes even wins a tournament. That's what happened with Chris Goddard. But more often than not, these guys fail to meet expectations. Either way, we just have to be cognizant of their elevated ownership. So, Nero, as we look to the high stakes ownership bump section this week, we look at what industry projections are telling us, not at Occupy, but other PGA DFS content sites and their ownership, their projections and how that can impact ownership. Who are you seeing this week, and who were you referring to earlier that is completely mispriced on DraftKings and FanDuel?
Yeah, well, one thing I'll just add to what you were saying, it's not that we don't want to play these guys. We do want to play them, actually. We certainly want to play all these guys that I'm about to talk about in low risk contests. And in smaller GPPs or GPPs with flatter payout structures, we also want to play these guys. And it's okay to have more of these guys even than the field does. It's in the large field contests where, by the way, we still want to play these guys. We probably just don't want to play as much of them as the field is playing. And again, not necessarily the studs that we're going to talk about. When I say Scotty Scheffler's name, he doesn't apply here. It's the lower price guys that attract that chalk are the ones in again, the high risk contests where so much of the prize is going to first place that we're okay kind of being underneath what the field thinks they're going to have. So that being said, four of them on both sites: Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Maverick McNeely, and Aaron Rai. So Maverick McNeely is one of my two massively mispriced players. He's probably, looks now anyway, this will change by Wednesday as the odds shift. But right now he looks like the most underpriced player across all the sites anywhere. So I'd expect him to be very popular in low risk contests and in smaller contests. On top of the fact that you pair him with Scotty Scheffler, and it really opens up the last four spots in your build. So I think McNeely, especially in those high dollar contests, he's going to get an extra. He's going to be one of those players that gets kind of that extra bump. So to those four on DraftKings, I would add Tommy Fleetwood, Corey Connors, Harry Hall, and Harris English. And then to the original four of Scheffler, Rahm, McNeely, and Wright on FanDuel, I would add Marco Penge. He's the second player that I was talking about, right in that 6K range, who is also criminally underpriced, and Laura Cantor.
Yeah, just just a crazy list of golfers, right? So Pinch, Cantor on FanDuel. Let's go back to DraftKings really quickly, and we're just looking at low 6K range, and you look how easy it is to fit some of these guys in. All right, Pot Eater, 63,300 PGA Tour winner, Dustin Johnson, probably past any chance of doing anything, but obviously a very high ceiling in his prime. Then we look at
Just
a
played
look.
well last week, though, by the way, in the live
He
event.
did,
DJ did.
he
So,
did, he did.
look out.
Then we have Matty Smith, who finished second a couple weeks ago with McNeely, PGA Tour winner, Glover, PGA Tour winner, Chris Kirk, PGA Tour winner, Tom Hoagie, PGA Tour winner, Marco Penge, third last week, Michael Kim, PGA Tour winner, Nick Taylor, PGA Tour winner, blah, 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 blah. Tons and tons of PGA Tour winners at like 6,100, 6K. So, but as you said, Nero, especially in smaller contests, just a couple of these guys and the guys you mentioned will be where the ownership gravitates toward. So all we gotta do is just make one or two pivots down here to a little bit less ownership, or probably a lot less ownership, and just maybe a little bit less odds to win. And those discrepancies between the odds to win difference and the ownership difference normally don't match up.
Totally agree. Didn't work out well for us last week, but that's a little bit more of an outlier. I still think that is absolutely the right strategy to employ.
Absolutely. So now if we move on to the betting markets, as we mentioned, odds to move, typically what we do, we track three sharp sports books that are known to attract respected sharp golf at betting action. And then we monitor their odds to win, the golfer's odds to win at all the books throughout the week. And if a golfer's odds to win have improved from Sunday night, Monday morning, all the way until Wednesday night, Thursday morning, we mark that down. And if they move it all three sports books, we classify that as a trifecta play. And generally, these golfers who classify as trifecta plays have an extremely high hit rate in PGA DFS. Rightfully so. It makes sense intuitively. Five of the six guys on the list last week made the cut. I think it was five of the seven because I had one of them in my lineup who did not make the cut because, of course. But we look to this week. It is still too early to have a trifecta play. Again, we are recording this early Monday afternoon. But Nero, we do have five guys who have moved at multiple sportsbooks so far. And I'll let you list the names of what you think about them. But just looking at our numbers, some of these guys have seen ridiculous moves, like big chunks taken off their odds to win, and that's a good thing, by the way. So I think we have to really keep note of these five guys.
100%. I think you'll most open courses. Again, I'm talking about the theoretical British Open for everyone. There's a lot of variance on these courses. Not all of them, but most of them. Portrush certainly is one of those courses with the bunkering being half shot penalties and so many of those things and random bounces getting you stuck up against the face of a bunker and you're playing great and all of a sudden you have to make a nine to like when you have those variant weeks, it's not as much of a surprise to see the guys a little bit lower down price range. By the way, when I say these, they fit most of them fit a profile, and to see them just get their odds massively reduced just because they simply have a better shot to win than their original odds implied. Nothing more. No kind of nefarious stuff going on here. So the five are Aaron Rye, Taylor Pendrith, Nick Taylor. Oh, I hate to see Nick Taylor lining up there. That's going to be a problem for my bankroll. Maverick McNeely and Corey Connors. So we could start, I suppose, by saying three of the five are Canadian. That doesn't really mean anything, but certainly Rye and Connors, ball striking robots, and more accuracy off the tee than distance. Nick Taylor also fits into that accuracy off the tee camp. Pendrith and McNeely would be a little bit more in the well-rounded category, ball striking. McNeely gets it done a little bit more with his short game, but I mean, truly, he's just someone who has been playing better than what his original odds and his original DraftKings pricing would have you think that he's playing. So, he's probably a pretty good fit. He might not be the most amazing fit in the world, but you look back through his last results: 22nd, 17th, 37th, 5th, a miscut, a 33rd, 60th, but also a third, a 32nd, a third, another 32nd, a second, a ninth. Like, how many top five finishes is that so far this year? Like five of them, and the guy's priced at 6K. Like, I mean, that's just, ridiculous. And whatever, same thing for whatever his opening odds actually were. So I think that's why you're seeing a little bit more of his move compared to everyone else, who's a little bit more in kind of that ball striking profile.
And how I would use this, we have a lot of new viewers during major championship week. So, first of all, welcome. But how would you use this information is a question that you may ask. And first of all, by Wednesday night, we have a fully updated list of these odds moves. Niromada will put them in our daily plug in the Wednesday update at OccupyFantasy.com. I will also post the final trifecta plays in our Discord server, so OccupyFantasy.com members will have the latest update then. But if you're just looking at this video, just watching free content, we understand that. What I would do is take these list of five guys and compare them to some of the other segments we've talked about. So we talked about Aaron Rye, popular in industry projections, probably a safer play, especially with the odds move. Same goes for Maverick McNeely. We look at Nick Taylor, who will be lower owned, we expect, getting sharp betting love, and our model really likes him. That's a great pivot away from those guys, or just to pair with those guys to lessen some of the ownership in your high stakes lineup. And then someone like Pendrith, who we haven't really talked about just yet, maybe that's a guy that you input into your player pool and start thinking, okay, how can I get Pendrith in? Does he fit any of the builds I'm looking for? Or at least if I'm building 20 or 150 lineups, get some exposure to him and perhaps be overweight to him. Nero, did I miss anything as far as how to maybe use these betting odds in addition to some of the other segments we talked about?
I don't think so. I mean, honestly, the simplest thing to do is, we release the final trifecta list on Wednesday night. You go into your player pool, and whatever you are using to build your lineups, just make sure you have more than the field does of all of those players that are listed in that trifecta list. So you have one of them's in there and he's projected for 14% ownership. Well, make sure you have 20% exposure to him in your player pool, and like that's it. That's like the way for dummies to use this stuff, and it's simple and it's easy. But yeah, the more refined way would be kind of dig in a little bit more about how you want to use them in low risk and high risk contests, and how you want to use them in your roster construction to supplement or take away from other chalky pieces that you might have in your lineup.
As Nero likes to say, these are all ingredients into our PGA DFS soup. Betting odds are just one of those ingredients. So as we close out the show here, let's transition to our lineup building segment. But before we do, we mentioned the weather a couple of times so far. And Nero, it can be crazy around these link style courses, especially when they're exposed on the coastline. But just looking at the forecast, it doesn't look like it's going to be too tough. Maybe a little bit of wind on Thursday. I'm curious to see what you are seeing. But again, if it remains relatively calm, that factors more into the ball striking angle that we mentioned during the model portion earlier. So what are you seeing in terms of wind? And again, we're recording this Monday, and we know things can change pretty quickly in this part of the world when it comes to the weather forecast. So what is your recommendation to viewers out there if they don't have access to the daily plug on Wednesday when you post a weather update, what they should be looking for?
You were looking for two things. Primarily, you're looking at wind. Secondarily, you're looking at precipitation. So, is it going to rain? We know it's been very, very dry in the run up. We should expect the course to be playing very firm and fast. So, even if it gets some rain, it's probably not going to soften it up too much. Might just kind of take the edge off a little bit. And right now, it looks like winds, like constant wind speeds between 10 to 15 miles an hour on Thursday with gusts up into the 20s, and definitely some different pockets of rain. Don't know how heavy that's going to be, but that would be the thing to keep in mind, or keep looking at. But like you mentioned, Brian, outside of that, Friday, Saturday, Sunday look pretty calm right now. Again, especially for where this is on the coast. And so I would say, if the current forecast holds up, and they don't get too much rain on Thursday, it's going to be more of a ball striking fest than anything else.
Just really quickly, for those who play Showdown Contest Round 1, with the weather being so drastically different as of now on Thursday, would that change your player profile for what you're looking for in Showdown lineups? Would you play more of the scrambling around the green types in that heavier wind, or would you just let our week-long projections and predictions guide your Round 1 Showdown picks as well?
That's a very good call out. I think I would, the way that it looks today, I would be more biased towards my players who play well in wind. So players in my databases or who in projection systems show like they gain strokes in windy environments and that kind of thing. I would definitely be more apt to play them in those Thursday showdowns.
Okay, perfect. Definitely on the same page there. Now let's build this lineup for people who are playing on DraftKings. And again, you can use this lineup if you want. We don't recommend it because we don't have all the information at our fingertips as we are recording this Monday. Our purpose for doing this, and again, you guys seem to like this a lot. If you do like it, drop a comment below. Let us know. This is the second to last video of the season. The last video will be next week. But as we transition and look forward to 2026, is this a segment we want to continue? You guys let us know. Drop a comment. Let us know if you like the lineup building segment. But the purpose for us, for you to do this, is to show how we use all the different ingredients of the soup to build a lineup for tournaments. By who's the cheapest guy we feel comfortable using in a hand-built lineup? Who are guys that are fitting, checking off multiple lists of ingredients, and all while keeping ownership in mind. So Nero, as we play our favorite game, who's the cheapest guy we feel comfortable using? This is a lot different of a game than we've had in recent weeks because there's been some very uncomfortable guys we've looked at. So if you're hand building a GPP lineup, I'm not sure you have to dip in the 5K range right away, especially when we've already talked about Nick Taylor at 6K, Penge at 6K, and these other guys at 6,100. We could literally play two, maybe three of these guys, fit in Scheffler, and then we can just have a party.
100%. For a truly large field build, I think the cheapest I'd feel comfortable using is Elvis Smiley, down at 5,200. Young player from Australia, probably going to be pretty good actually as he gets older and is showing flashes of his ceiling in various European events. But yeah, for this type of build, no, I don't think you need to get into the fives at all. The easy answer to this is Nick Taylor at 6K. Again, assuming we're going to build for somewhere between 500 to 1,000 plus entries. I think Taylor makes a ton of sense and probably is a great way to start as like the cheapest one we're comfortable using.
I agree. So the next question we always play is Scotty or not Scotty. And as we've talked about in this show for the past couple of weeks, past couple of months, as some commentators on our video have said, guys, just play Scheffler. I know you're the experts, but maybe I can be the expert in this area. Let me help you out. Play Scheffler every time he tees it up. And we should probably do that too because you talked about having the highest floor. And if we're building for a small field GPP, having a floor from your stud is more important than you probably think. So, Nero, I assume, given the softness of the pricing, Scheffler being top three in the model, best odds to win, what you've talked about earlier, we're probably going to play Scheffler here as well, right?
Yep. 100%. I'd
Cool.
say let's build it, and I think it's a great pairing because again, the builds that have Scheffler plus players in the low 6Ks are going to have Scheffler plus McNeely or Scheffler plus Penge, or maybe Scheffler plus McNeely and Penge. So I think this immediately makes us different than most all of the Scotty builds.
I agree. And so now if we look at overlap plays, guys that have fit multiple criteria for us so far, and by Wednesday we'll also have all of the odds move in the Wednesday update. We'll have Nero's picks in the daily plug, just more areas to pull from. We look at the guys Aaron Rye, Pendrith, McNeely, Connors as betting market moves so far. I believe most of these guys actually rank pretty well in the model as well. Outside the top 10, we didn't list them. But who's the next overlap play you would look at to fit in here? I mean, I'm still looking at the pricing. It's pretty crazy to see guys like Neiman 82, Hovland 83. The pricing just incredibly soft. So what would be the next step for you with 74.50 remaining per player with Nick Taylor and Scotty Scheffler?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so few guys in the 9K and 8K range. I mean, it's always small, but like this week, it seems like it's insanely small. There's only 5 guys priced in the 9Ks, and there's 7 guys priced in the 8Ks. So, I mean, that's 12 players out of 150, whatever, that take up the full $2,000 of your price range. Just seems absolutely ridiculous. So, I think for me, I'd be fine to go one more lower player. I think Rye would make a lot of sense at the 6,900, and that would allow us to, number one, don't think we'd have to worry too much about ownership, and we'd have 7,600 ish for our last 3 players. And when you look at that upper 7K range to mid 7K range, there's tons of guys that you could play there. So I think that's probably where I would go next.
I agree. And so 7,600 left per player. You could even fit another stud in here if you wanted to. If you wanted to go the Fleetwood route or even the Morikawa route. And again, one of our sayings here on the channel and in Discord is if a guy's number one in the model, we should probably play him. And when that guy is just $8,700, we should also probably play him, especially when he fits the build. So I'm gonna make an executive decision here. Put in Colin Morikawa. We can fit in Scheffler and Morikawa with 2 guys we already like. That leaves us 7,100 left per player. This gives us the option of going another low 6K guy or 2 mid 7K guys or some variation in between.
Yeah. I think my first thought would be because there's so much quality in that low 7K range, like fire away
Yep.
there. Connors makes a lot of sense because we talked about. I'm still a little nervous about the wrist, overcoming the wrist injury from the U.S. Open. He was a little bit sketchier with his ball striking last week at the Scottish than he normally is. So, not sure about that so much. When you look for crossover guys, though, that we've already talked about, there's not a ton
In this range,
down here. Yeah,
yeah.
in this range, there's not. I mean, obviously, you can drop down to Pendrith at 6,500, and that would leave you 7,700 for your last player. And there's plenty of solid choices up there. Justin Rose, I think, would make a lot of sense. Um, guess I don't need to worry about ownership. I think I would rather go with a safer play and either Burns or Straka, your choice, at 7,400. I think they both make a ton of sense, and both could win this thing, to be honest, from that 7,400 slot.
Absolutely. So yeah, Sep seventh last week, third at the Memorial a few starts ago. So we go Sep at 74. That leaves us 68, and we could fit in. Let's scroll down here. Nobody we really talked about so far. The other option, if you do feel comfortable with Corey Connors, you could go Corey Connors and JJ Spawn, or you could go up to say Hovland. We've talked about at 8,300, who is a model play that leaves you 5,900. Maybe that's not enough left based on what we're trying to do. Let's see here. Who's below Hovland? Neiman, Kepka, Henley, Fitzpatrick. Henley's another guy. We haven't really talked about him yet, Nero, but Henley's 7,900, a guy who fits the accurate off the tee, not as long ball striking guy, just outside the top 10 in the model. So he's another guy that we could clearly put in this type of build.
Yeah, 100%. You could even put Kepka in there with no model base, but all subjective based stuff. He was second here in 2019. His caddy, Ricky Elliott, is from Portrush. It's basically like his hometown. So, Brooks will be fully dialed in and ready to go, you would assume anyway. But yeah, if we keep it at the Morikawa, Straka, it leaves us with a 6,800. I think my favorite then, especially the ones we already talked about, you got Berger at 6,600.
Oh, yeah.
That would leave the 200s, and I think it's a nice fit to finish off.
For sure. And again, we look at projected ownership. The guys who will be popular in smaller contests, industry projections and odds tells us this. Definitely Scheffler, probably Rye as well. And the rest of the guys will be middling ownership. Maybe a couple of these guys will creep under 5%, but a perfect type of build for small field contests. And hopefully that gives you, the viewer, the right mindset as you're building lineups for the Open Championship. Again, if you have questions about this, drop a comment below. I'll be monitoring the channel all the way through lock, which is overnight on Thursday. We will happily answer any questions that you do have. So drop a comment and show your support for, I don't need the support, but show the support for Niro as well, for him taking the time to do these videos every single week. Drop your love and support for Niro in the comments below. Daily Plug will be out Tuesday night or Wednesday morning with Niro's top plays, course breakdown, and his lineup construction tips. Our Occupy model will be up later today, Monday evening, with our top ranked plays for every single golfer, FanDuel and DraftKings, with projected ownership, and that ownership will be updated all the way through Wednesday evening. And then finally on Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night, the final betting market moves and the trifecta plays will be posted in the Daily Plug and in our Discord server. You do not want to miss that. And if you've never been a part of OccupyFantasy.com, you can get started as low as $7 per week. That gives you access to all the golf tools we talked about, but all sports are included as well. So if you're a DFS player in general, you will find even extra value during the week of a major championship. So for Niro, I'm Brian. Thank you. Thank you everyone for listening. We appreciate you. Good luck and enjoy the Open Championship at Royal Portrush.